Breaking it down in layman's terms today, we're going to talk about the world of micro-learning. Micro-training, micro-learning, leveraging tools, technologies for better engagement for the benefit of our workforce. Today, we've got Pete Mastin, CEO of Learnie. Pete, what it do?
How are you, Doug? Great to be here.
It's great to see you again. This is our second call. We did the virtual Zoom call thing, and I've had a chance to actually learn a little bit more about your product, your service, Learnie, through one of your coworkers, Kurt Wallace. I got to do a demo of it, and I'm just blown away about micro-learning, leveraging video training, especially on your phone. I'm a video guy, so I know I had to have you about this when it comes to the training. So this Learnie, break down micro-learning, if you could, quickly, the concept of Learnie and how'd you get started with that? I know it's a couple questions in one, but kind of a quick overview.
Sure. So we all come out of the ed tech space or the, workforce training space. I think we added up the numbers and we ended up having like 150 years of experience. But what we had all noticed, is that as our customers had deployed these solutions, and we saw it in the industry, they weren't actually hitting the mark. They weren't actually capturing, the knowledge of their individual, organizations, nor were people even happy using these learning management systems. Mostly LMSs are used for compliance training, don't sexually harass your coworker, don't discriminate. That's all good stuff. But what's missing is capturing the knowledge of how you actually, as a business, function and make money and what you do in your business. So we wanted to build, starting in 2020, we decided to build something that captured the knowledge of what a company does and pass that on to the next generation of workers in that company in a private manner. So there's really three components that are really important that we put together to our solution. One is it's mobile first, because we believe the mobile is the new computer. It's in your pocket. People don't really want to engage on a computer anymore. They want to engage on a mobile device. Two, it's community. And what we mean by community is we allow, and we can have all the controls in place to control, bad content creators, but we allow everyone to contribute knowledge, or special people in your organization to contribute knowledge that they have. And by doing that, you capture your standard operating procedures in your company in a way that you're not doing right now. And lastly, it's micro-learning, because everybody knows that, our short attention spans just can't sustain a 30-minute or a 45-minute training video anymore. And so people need to have these in small bursts. We're also video based. And as you mentioned in the opening, I'm a video guy too. And we know that video is the most engaging way to trade knowledge. And so we implemented this mobile community micro-learning platform as a video-based platform. We built it in 2021, launched it in 22 and 23. We've got customers. We're in the market. We're having a big time.
I love it. I love how you broke down, mobile community, micro-learning. And I asked you a big loaded question. You gave me everything on how you got started. What really intrigued me is, I'm familiar with training and development. I've been around, but the community attributes. When I went on the demo, and I encourage everybody to check out the website, we'll have the links, but go and take a demo if you're vetted as a client or customer for this, because it's the idea of the community thing, the social impact, where you're training, but you can do top-down training, or you could let your community share insights on that. Can you elaborate a little bit more when you talk about kind of the community impact on that? We're not talking about nonprofit. I'm talking about the community of the people.
Yeah, the organization, your community, and you might have many communities within a company, right? I mean, our typical deployment right now has anywhere from 3 to 10 communities. And so here's a community platform you probably are familiar with, Slack, right? Most companies have Slack, or many do, and you have different communities in Slack. It's the same. Basically, a community might be your sales team. It might be, an operational team. It might be, if you're a construction company, it might be a particular job site where, there's specific activities happening. That maybe you have, some electrical work happening, and you want to notify everybody that, hey, this is dangerous over here. Don't go if you're not qualified. And so you can create a Learnie about that. And that's another component of our platform that's very different than learning management systems. Is the content creation is so easy and so natural. If you've ever created a TikTok or if you ever created an Instagram, it's that easy. And so it opens up the possibility of creating what we refer to as disposable learning, something that, maybe you've got a dangerous, a sinkhole or whatever, something that's dangerous is dangerous only for the next 2 weeks or the next week, but you can create a piece of learning around that and warn everybody, as opposed to just hanging up a little sign or some yellow tape. So, by creating that learning, you're passing knowledge to the other coworkers, and you probably will throw that away in a couple of weeks when you fill it in with gravel, but that's okay.
I love the idea you talk about disposable. Well, it's learning on the fly, but it's also developing your workforce, the modern workforce, being able to, if you're in a construction area and you've learned a new technique in the field, you want to share it with your peers. Well, that's instant information. That's training and development on the fly, onboarding videos. What are the best of trade secrets out there? Letting your staff, it inspires them to be part of the learning environment. If I'm correct in saying, I mean, I think, I have this tool now. Now I'm an employee. Now I'm trained, but I also can provide feedback.
Right. And you also touched on something, which is skills, and we're big on skills. We've integrated with the EMSI skills database, over 35,000 skills. So you can actually create a Learnie. A Learnie is a lesson, 3 to 5 minute lesson. You can associate that with a skill. And then later, as the administrator, you can report on, here's all the employees in our company that have skill A, B, and C. And so we've really created a platform that allows you to create bottom-up learning, but also top-down learning, and use it as an LMS replacement if you so desire. Companies that already have LMSs, we can plug and play directly with them using XAPI. So we're a fully integratable component to an LMS, but we can also act as the LMS itself for companies that don't have training. And we run into a lot of those companies. It's surprising, in particular, not surprising, I won't say that, but LMSs have been focused on the top, Fortune 1000 companies for years. They don't really service SMBs or even large companies that aren't, in that top 1000 or whatever. And so we really shine there because we can replace or not even replace, take the place of that LMS. And a lot of these people are using, I've personally had conversations with large multi-location restaurants that when asked, how are you guys doing training? They hold up a book and say, well, I got this book.
Right.
And so we are obviously better than a book. We're, video-based training. We market and sell into that industry as well. Really any industry that has frontline workers, lots of, it can be seasonal workers, frontline workers. But we also have customers that are desk computer-based training. They use our screen capture to share knowledge about their software package. So we really run the gamut on, our ability to service both large companies, small companies, and variety of industry verticals.
You definitely run the gamut. And what I liked about what you said there in the platform is it's very customizable. You talked about SMB, you talked about frontline workers, you talked a little bit about everybody that needs some form of engagement or training. I also like the fact that you can run it on your desktop, do screen captures, or of course the cell phone, which alluded to the short burst of training, the knowledge base, putting that up there. You also have a platform that's on your website. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, called Learnie Pays, and that's more for the content creator. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so in 2022, we had launched the product. We were selling in a B2B space, and it occurred to us that, wow, there's these influencers, these people using, platforms like Patreon or Kajabi that aren't really learning platforms. They're just subscription platforms. But for those influencers that really want to teach people something, that really want to convey knowledge, you could actually use our platform for that. And so we implemented an interface with Stripe. And so influencer now can go and create self-service. They can create their own private community. We essentially split the profit with them 85-15. They get 85% of all subscriptions. We just take 15%. There's no subscription fee. There's no setup fee. And we've had really good results from that. We've seen quite a few influencers that have created communities and are enjoying reaping the profits of their efforts.
I love that concept because you're dialing into the impactful creative creator who wants another platform besides an LMS thing, and it's very customizable, and it's a
Yeah.
payout, and it works that. And then back to the enterprise, the SMB, the learning, the platform for training, onboarding, etc. It's so customizable, and it works at all different industries, whether it's frontline working, onboarding training, engagement training, whatever the training is. You want to be engaged, you want to be insightful. Now, you talked a little bit about the micro learning. I want to really hold in on that, because that's where we're at today. People get distracted. Well, in a sense, the phone can be a distraction, obviously. But what makes learning different than the dreaded LMS? And I'm teeing it up here is, you got to get their attention, and you got to make it well engaging and somewhat fun and knowledgeable. Can you talk a little bit more about the mindset of micro learning in general from Peter's terms?
Yeah, and we did something very different so when we started in 2020, if you would ask a professional trainer, what about micro learning? What do you think? They would have said, yeah, it seems like a good idea, but there's no set definition for what microlearning is, or there certainly wasn't then. There's a Japanese form of presentation called Pikakuchu that we looked at and said, wow, that's actually a pretty nice format for training people. It's used worldwide. And so we adopted we made some modifications. It's video based as opposed to theirs is more presentation based. But, we essentially have short bursts of knowledge with cognitive breaks between each burst. You can have as many of those bursts as you want in a Learnie. But, you're limited to short bursts with cognitive breaks to assemble those Learnies. And by doing it that way, you create engagement, you create a lean in, people are, paying attention to the content, because it doesn't just drone on and on. So that has been really, I think, one of the biggest innovations we've brought is that we enforce microlearning in a way that other platforms just can't. If you have your standard LMS, sure, you can do short form video in many of those, but it's not the same. We've talked to people who said, yeah, we're doing like microlearning. And then when you drill in on what they're doing, oh yeah, it's a 15-minute video. Well, that's not microlearning, right? And so we really strive to create a platform that the output, the content that is being consumed by the learner is extraordinarily engaging, short form, to the point. And if you use our methodology to create that content, if you create content in Learnie, what you find is that your content naturally becomes more engaging, because we're forcing you to think through, how to get to the point.
No, and I love that. And it's the engagement level of micro learning, but you've been doing this for a while, and you've kind of seen the secret sauce, what works and what doesn't work. Now, what works is, I'm going to because I want to get it right in layman's terms, I'm going to read right from the website, and we'll put up some information here. Micro learning for the modern worker: seasonal support, raise engagement, eliminate churn, increase proficiency, promote growth, essentially reduce employee turnover, scale and standardize your training, inspire your workforce in the field, short videos by peers on demand, get your teams up to speed fast. That's a lot of benefits for micro learning, and it's all there of learning. And again, we'll have the visual to support what I said there. I encourage you to go to the website. Is there anything else from a standpoint on micro learning that you would like to add, or any developments if you've seen going maybe from 2023 into 2024?
Well, I think you're going to see it become a lot more common. I think more and more learning platforms will start, because it's clearly, it's the winning hand, right? It's what people are, if you go to any of the conferences, the training conferences, people are all have realized that the human attention span has diminished, and that, that peer learning creates much higher retention. And that's really the two big parts, and then the mobile component. But if you think about peer learning being the community component, and then micro learning, if you put those two together, you have something that's very special and unique in the industry. And by doing that, you're creating the engagement. So some of the things you read off were really attributes of the community of the community side of the micro learning. Others were attributes of the micro learning. But generally speaking, the attention span issues we solve through, really short bursts with cognitive breaks that maintain engagement. I will also say that in a broader sense, if you're asking your employees to contribute their knowledge, you're showing respect and you're creating what Josh Bersin calls a learning organization. And we are big fans of that. We think that, if companies that create learning organizations and sort of within their, company culture tend to succeed at a much higher rate because they are, creating employees that feel empowered, and those employees aren't going to go to another company because they're empowered to be here. So that lack of churn comes from the engagement isn't just consuming the knowledge, it's the guys and girls who are creating the knowledge as well. So you create these learning organizations and cultures, your companies that do that win.
They win, and I love that because you're creating a culture of empowerment, inspiration, and learning and development. You're creating an area where employees can learn from each other, and they tend to be happy, they tend to stay, and they tend to grow and develop. I love that, and a tool like Learnie is speeds ahead of that. And you talked about cognitive load. I want to bring that term up. I learned that from Kurt, but let's face it, man, we want to learn things. We want to learn things. And my comprehension level is not what it used to be. And it never really was all that much anyway, but being able to learn in bursts of information and being able to remember that speaks volumes to microlearning, and having a culture that your employees are all immersed in that's even more powerful. What coming into 2024, do you see any more developments, holograms and training? Just throw it out there.
No, that's great. We're actually doing some work right now. I probably shouldn't talk about this, but I'll talk about it anyway. We're doing some work right now with some AR company that is going to allow us to utilize augmented reality. So imagine you're a solar panel installer company, and you've got hundreds of these guys who go out in the field, and you can create a piece of learning about how to put together and assemble this. But then right in the middle of that, you can have a burst where you can project what that panel looks like and rotate it and across all the dimensions and see exactly the technical pieces. So we're merging video with augmented reality, and that's exciting. And I'll go back to something you were saying earlier too, because I wanted to touch on that. One of the things about cognitive load that you mentioned is if for those that don't know, I mean, your ability to consume is limited, right? We own, if you put it in processor terms, we have a certain size processor in the human brain, and we can only take in so much. And this is reflected in what's called the forgetting curve. And so if you think about the forgetting curve, if you've never heard of the forgetting curve, it's and you can look it up on the internet. It's been around since I think the 20th century. But essentially it's a curve that just predicts that you're going to forget close to 80 to 90% of everything you learn on a daily basis. But there are methods that can be used, and Learnie has really, utilize those methods, but there's methods that can be used to create retention and overcome the forgetting curve. So, that cognitive load is a big deal for us because we know that you can only take in so much. So by building the knowledge and forcing the creator of the knowledge to follow that format, we actually, predict that the outcome will create much more retention. So I wanted to go back to that because it's what you made was
It's a good
very
point.
important
Yeah.
point.
The Ebbinghaus curve or whatever, being
That's
able
right.
to take in information that you can remember, and micro learning platforms, because I've been inundated with a lot of training programs where it's not micro learning or I'm not comprehending what it is. What really intrigues me, and I've said this about 4 times now, is the social impact of your teams. Now I'm going to flip up another word: social impact, certified B Corp. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So as a company, we decided to formulate ourselves around B Corp early on. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I mean, generally speaking, we believe that if a company can't do good and can't, produce what they produce without damaging the world, either socially or environmentally, then really that company probably is. You could do better. I'll
Right.
just say it that way. I don't want to be negative. And so we decided to support the B Labs. We don't support everything they do, but we support an awful lot of what they're trying to do. And we think that it's a great organization. We are a certified B Corp. We became one in 2022, and we're proud of it. And it's a certification process you go through. For those who aren't familiar with it, it's not it's not super time consuming or super heavy lift, but it's worth doing because it actually brings, and it did for me. I can tell you, I've been a CEO of other companies. I've never been a CEO of a B Corp. It made me think a lot harder about things like, how we're hiring and how we're doing these things. So they strive to do good. And I think that's a good thing, generally speaking.
No, I love that. And I'm glad you shared that with me because it's well documented on your website and some of the press releases and the conversations that I've had with some of your teammates and employees. Before we wrap this up, more like a rapid fire section, is there anything else that you'd like to add to our community? I know we go to the website, I get Microlearning, I get the social impact on all levels. You guys are cutting edge. What would you like to add for our audience that I didn't cover from a question standpoint? And just
I
the
think
floor is yours.
we do service many types of companies, but where we're finding the most, success and it is with companies with frontline deskless workers. What we find is those companies typically are underserved by LMSs. Most LMSs don't really have a good mobile experience at all. We're mobile first. And secondarily, a lot of those workforces are decentralized, and they have, some very knowledgeable people and then some people who just are entry level. And so the ability for those organizations to create peer learning is super important. And that can include anything from multi-location retail, right, to restaurants, to solar panel installers, to construction companies. So there's a wide variety within that description of companies that benefit from our technology. But I would just say add that. But again, we've got companies that are just that have their own software products that are using us to deliver training around that, which I would not have predicted in 2021. But you're not. I'm certainly happy that they're here, and they seem to be happy to be using the platform. And what they benefit from is the microlearning component, right? Because that's so. The three-legged stool of mobile community microlearning is important because there's really not many companies out there that can't, utilize at least two of those.
I love that, and I like that idea from the deskless worker, the frontline worker, from enterprise accounts that just need microlearning. I think you kind of run the gamut on everything and all things when it comes to changing the workforce, learning for good when it comes to training is what you do, and you speak volumes to that, and it's well documented. Hey, Pete, anything else before we wrap this up?
No, sir.
Parting shot?
I've enjoyed being here. Happy New Year's, everybody. I don't know when this is going to be broadcast, but it's around Happy New Year's now. But appreciate your time, Doug.
Well, we appreciate your time as well, and we'll broadcast it. We'll put it out there on the social networking sites. But one thing we'll definitely do is take this long form video and chop it into short form videos so your attention span can understand the cognitive load of what we're putting out. How was that?
Man, you're hired.
All right. Breaking it down in layman's terms, I want to thank Pete Mastin, CEO of Learnie, for sharing his time, his knowledge, and check out their website. Check out what they're doing. Get up to speed on the modern way of workforce learning and development, training and development. Thanks again, Pete, and have a great rest of your day, keeping it social, leveraging video.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.